Chapter 12 Growing Up. From the very beginning to the very end, pointing to our own heart to discover what is true isn't just a matter of honesty, but also a compassion and respect for what we see. In my office, there is a scroll with Japanese calligraphy and a painting of Zen master Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma is a fat, grumpy-looking man with a bushy eyebrow. He looks as if he has indigestion. The calligraphy reads, "Pointing directly at your own heart, you find Buddha." Listening to talk about the Dharma or the teaching of Buddha or practicing meditation is nothing other than studying ourselves. Whatever we are eating or working or meditating or listening or talking, the reason that we are here in this world at all is to study ourselves. In fact, it has been said that studying ourselves provides all the books we need. Maybe the reason there are Dharma talks and books is just to encourage us to understand this simple teaching. All the wisdom about how we cause ourselves to suffer, and all the wisdom about how joyful and fast and uncomplicated our mind are. Those two things, the understanding of might, whole, neurosis, and the wisdom of unconditional, unbiased truth, can only be found in our own experience. Bodhidharma brought Zen Buddhism from India to China. He was well known for being fierce and uncompromising. There is a story about how he kept nodding off during meditation, so he cut off his eyelid. When he threw them on the ground, they turned into a tea plant, and then he realized he could simply drink the tea to stay awake. He was uncompromising in that he wanted to know what was true, and he wasn't going to take anybody else's word for it. His big discovery was that by looking directly into our own heart, we find that the awakened Buddha, the completely unclouded experience of how things really are. In all kinds of situations, we can find out what is true simply by studying ourselves in every nook and cranny, in every black hole and bright spot. Whether it's murky, creepy, grisly, splendid, spooky, frightening, joyful, inspiring, peaceful, or wrathful. We can't just look at the whole thing. There is a lot of encouragement to do this, and meditation gives us the method. When I first encountered Buddhism, I was extremely relieved that they weren't only teaching, but also technique I could use to explore and test this teaching. I was told from day one that, just like Bodhidharma, I had to find out for myself what was true. However, when we sit down to meditate and take a honest look at our minds, there is a tendency for it to become a rather morbid and depressing project. We can lose all sense of humor and sit with a grim determination to get to the bottom of the stinking mess. After a while, when people have been practicing that way, we begin to feel so much guilt and distress that they just break down, and they might say to someone they trust, "Where is the joy in all this?" So, along with the clear seeing, there is another important element, that's kindness. It seems that without clarity and honesty, we don't progress. We just stay stuck in the same vicious cycle. But honestly, without kindness make us feel grim and mean, and pretty soon we start looking like we have been sucking on lemon. We become so caught up in introspection that we lose any contentment or gratitude we might have had. The sense of being irritated by ourselves and our lives and other people's idiosyncrasies becomes overwhelming. That's why there is so much emphasis on kindness. Sometimes it is expressed as heart, awakening your heart. Often it is called gentleness. Sometimes it is called unlimited friendliness. But basically, kindness is a down-to-earth, everyday way to describe the important ingredient that balance out the whole picture and help us connect with unconditional joy. As the Vietnamese teacher Thien Nhat Hanh says, suffering is not enough. Discipline is important. When we sit down to meditate, we are encouraged to stick with the technique and be faithful to the instruction. But within that container of discipline, why do we have to be so harsh? Do we meditate because we should? Do we do it become good Buddhists to please our teacher or to escape going to hell? How we record what arises in meditation is training for what we regard whatever arises in the rest of our life. So the challenge is how to develop compassion right along with clear seeing, how to train in lighten up and cheering up rather than becoming more guilt-ridden and miserable. Otherwise, all that happens is that we all cut body else down and we also cut ourselves down. Nothing ever measures up, nothing is ever good enough. Honesty without kindness, humor and good-heartedness can be just mean. From the very beginning to very end, pointing to our heart to discover what is true isn't a matter of honesty, but also the compassion and respect for what we see. Learning how to be kind to ourselves, learning how to respect ourselves is important. The reason it is important is that fundamentally, when we look into our heart and begin to discover what is confused and what is brilliant, what is bitter and what is sweet, it isn't just ourselves that we are discovering. We are discovering the universe. When we discover the Buddha that we are, we realize that everything and everyone is Buddha. We discover that everything is awake and everyone is awake. Everything is equally precious and whole and good, and everyone is equally precious and whole and good. When we regard thoughts and emotion with humor and openness, that's how we practice the universe. We are not just talking about our individual liberation, but how to help the community we live in, how to help our families, our country, and the whole continent, not to mention the world and the galaxy and as far as we want to go. There is interesting transition that occurs naturally and spontaneously. We begin to find that to the degree that there is bravery in ourselves, the willingness to look, to point directly at our heart, and to the degree that there is kindness toward ourselves, there is confidence that we can actually forget ourselves and open to the world. The only reason that we don't open our heart and mind to the other people is that they trigger confusion in us that we don't feel brave enough or sane enough to deal with. To the degree that we look clearly and compassionately at ourselves, we feel confident and fearless about looking into someone else's eye. Then this experience of opening to the world begins to benefit ourselves and others simultaneously. The more we relate with others, the more quickly we discover when we are blocked, where we are unkind, afraid, and shut down. Seeing this helpful, but it is also painful. Often the only way we know what to react to use it as ammunition against ourselves. We aren't kind, we aren't honest, we aren't brave, and we might as well give up right now. But when we apply the instruction to be soft and non-judgmental to whatever we see right at the very moment, then this embarrassing reflection in the mirror become our friend. Seeing the reflection become motivation to soften further and lighten up more. Because we know it is only way we can continue to work with others and be only benefit to the world. That's the beginning of growing up. As long as we don't want to be honest and kind with ourselves, then we are always going to be infant. When we begin just to try to accept ourselves, The ancient burden of self-importance lightened up considerably. Finally, there is room for genuine inquisitiveness, and we find we have an appetite for what's out there.